There is a reason certain stories never go away. Across cultures and centuries, people keep telling the same kind of story about places where the world thins, where time bends, where something crosses over. The details change, the names change, but the structure remains. Even modern entertainment can't let it go. A wildly popular series like Outlander centers on ancient stones that allow people to pass through time and space. The story insists these places aren't random. They are fixed, ancient, marked, activated by ritual, timing, and intention. Most viewers treat that as fantasy. But here's the problem. Stories don't become culturally dominant unless they resonate with something already buried in the human imagination. Fiction doesn't invent long-lasting ideas from nothing. It repackages older ones. And when the same idea keeps resurfacing across civilizations that never spoke to each other, the question is no longer, is this real? The better question is, why do we keep returning to it? If any of this feels strangely familiar, if these stories seem to echo something you've noticed but never fully named, stay with me. What follows isn't about fantasy. It's about patterns that refuse to disappear. Long before modern storytelling, ancient cultures marked very specific locations on Earth, places they believed were not like others. Stonehenge was not simply a monument. Folklore surrounding it describes it as a place of power, alignment, and transition. Not a doorway you walk through, but a convergence, activated by timing, movement, and ritual. In Peru, high in the Andes, there is Hayu Marca, often called the Gate of the Gods. Local legend speaks of a stone doorway not meant for physical passage, but for crossing realms, accessed by priests through ceremony and knowledge. In Sri Lanka, Ranmasu Uyana contains an ancient carved star chart or code, still not fully understood. Some believe it was used to identify or activate specific cosmic alignments tied to travel beyond the ordinary world. In Scotland, the Callanish stones, older than Stonehenge, are wrapped in stories of lightning strikes, transformations, and moments when the boundary between worlds weakened. These cultures were separated by vast oceans. They did not share language, religion, or technology. Yet they marked stones, gateways, alignments, and ritual activation again and again. That repetition should unsettle you. Because mere coincidence doesn't scale this well. Ancient cultures were not looking for science fiction portals. When they spoke of doorways, they were describing conditions, moments when the ordinary rules of perception no longer held, when awareness crossed into something layered, structured, and ordered beyond daily life. A doorway was not a hole in the sky. It was an access point. That same language appears in Scripture. When Jacob fled into the wilderness, he did not seek an experience. He did not perform a ritual. He lay down to sleep. And in that place, he saw what he described as a stairway, stretching between heaven and earth, with beings ascending and descending upon it. When he woke, he did something striking. He did not call the experience a dream alone. He named the location. "This is none other than the house of God," he said. "This is the gate of heaven." Not because the ground itself was magical, but because access occurred there. Later, prophets would describe similar moments. Awareness opened, perception widened, the unseen suddenly structured and populated. The pattern remains consistent: place, timing, and a human consciousness briefly permitted to see more than usual, which raises an unsettling question. If access once occurred without technology, without machines, without networks, what do you think constant immersion, repetition, and focused attention are recreating now? Not stone gates, but modern doorways that rarely announce themselves as such. Ancient people believed doorways worked both ways. A threshold was never just about where a person could go. It was about what could come through. That's why these places were treated with fear as much as reverence. You approached carefully. You prepared. You didn't linger. Modern culture has removed that caution. We enter altered states constantly now: deep focus, dissociation, immersion, without ceremony, without boundaries, without even naming what we're doing. And unlike the ancients, we assume nothing is watching. But here's what should trouble you. Across folklore, scripture, and ancient warning texts, the danger of doorways was never that humans might escape this world. It was that other intelligences could access ours, not through spectacle, not through possession scenes and horror tropes, but through attention, invitation, and permission. The more absorbed a person became, the more vulnerable they were believed to be, not because they were weak, but because their guard was down. Doorways didn't open because someone wanted them to. They opened because someone stopped paying attention to what they were allowing. This is where modern audiences often misunderstand the danger. We imagine demons as crude, violent, and obvious, entities that announce themselves through chaos, fear, or spectacle. That image doesn't come from scripture. It comes from TV, computer screens, and movies. Biblical descriptions are far more unsettling. These beings are portrayed as intelligent, observant, and patient. They do not rely on force. They rely on access. They influence rather than dominate. They whisper rather than shout. They don't crash through doors. They wait. Ancient texts repeatedly warn that influence enters through agreement, curiosity, and unguarded attention. Not because a person is immoral, but because they are open, absorbed, and unaware of what they are allowing. That is why thresholds were feared, because once attention crossed over, it was no longer alone. What makes the modern world uniquely vulnerable is not wickedness. It is availability. Doorways now remain open for hours each day. Attention is fragmented. Identity is fluid. Discernment is dulled by repetition and familiarity. And the most dangerous part? Nothing feels wrong. No voice speaks. No figure appears. No rule is broken. Yet something begins to influence thought, emotion, impulse, and desire, always nudging, never forcing. Ancient people feared thresholds because they believed someone waited on the other side. Modern people don't fear them at all. And that may be the greatest invitation ever extended. Ancient doorways were rare. You had to travel to them, prepare for them, approach them with caution. Modern doorways are everywhere. Artificial intelligence is one, not because it is conscious, but because it mirrors, adapts, and responds in ways that feel personal. It listens, it affirms, it shapes thought through dialogue and repetition. Over time, it begins to sound less like a tool and more like a presence. Endless digital immersion is another. Social media feeds, algorithmic loops, gaming worlds, virtual spaces, environments designed to absorb attention until time dissolves. You enter for minutes and emerge hours later, disoriented, altered, and unaware of what shifted while you were gone. Addiction functions as a doorway. So does obsession. So does pornography. So does any repeated behavior that narrows awareness while bypassing discernment. Even altered states marketed as wellness can function this way. Breathwork, guided meditations, dissociative practices, methods that intentionally quiet the mind without asking what might fill the silence. None of these announce themselves as spiritual. That's what makes them effective. These doorways do not demand belief. They require only participation. And once attention is surrendered, influence no longer needs permission. It already has access. Ancient cultures feared thresholds because they believed something waited beyond them. Modern culture insists nothing is there, and yet, the effects are unmistakable. Something is shaping us. The question is no longer whether doorways exist. It's who is allowed to use them. Up to this point, everything we've discussed could still be dismissed as metaphor. Patterns, psychology, cultural habits. But Scripture does something uncomfortable here. It removes the abstraction. The Bible does not describe evil as a force alone. It describes intelligences, not myths, not symbols. Beings with will, awareness, and intent. Entities that observe, adapt, and exploit access points in the human world. And they do not enter through violence. They enter through permission. Jesus warned that unclean spirits seek places to dwell. Peter warned of adversaries who prowl, watching. Paul warned that the battle was not against flesh and blood, but against unseen rulers and influences operating just beyond ordinary perception. None of this language fits chaos. It fits strategy. Demons are not portrayed as creators. They are inhabitants. They do not generate worlds. They move through them. They attach. They influence. They distort what already exists. And here is the snap. Every doorway we've discussed, ancient or modern, shares the same vulnerability, sustained attention without discernment. That is how influence enters. Not through summoning, not through rituals most people imagine, but through environments where awareness is lowered, identity is softened, and vigilance fades. The ancients feared thresholds because they believed someone waited there. Scripture confirms that fear was justified. Modern culture calls these things habits, tools, or technologies. The Bible calls them opportunities. And opportunities are never neutral, because something is always looking for access. Once you see that, you can't unsee it. The doorways don't look mysterious anymore, they look intentional. This is the stage most people recognize, but rarely connect. Influence does not announce itself as invasion. It shows up as drift, as subtle shifts that feel internal, reasonable, even self-generated. Thoughts begin to repeat. Impulses feel slightly foreign. Desires intensify without clear origin. Patience shortens. Discernment dulls. Nothing dramatic happens. But over time, something changes. Scripture describes this phase not as possession, but as strongholds, patterns of thought and behavior that entrench themselves quietly. The person is still themselves, still functioning, still convinced they are choosing freely. Yet the trajectory has altered. Ancient warnings consistently describe the same progression. Access leads to influence. Influence leads to agreement. Agreement reshapes perception. What once felt optional begins to feel necessary. What once felt wrong begins to feel justified. And here is the most unsettling detail. The influence adapts. It doesn't push where resistance is strong. It leans where permission already exists. It uses memory, desire, habit, and emotion as leverage, always working with the person, never against them. That is why modern doorways are so effective. They don't collapse the self. They occupy it gradually. By the time the effects are visible, compulsion, obsession, fragmentation, the access has already been normalized. And the question is no longer whether something entered. The question is how long it has been shaping the inside without being noticed. Awareness is not neutral. Once you recognize a doorway, you are no longer innocent of what passes through it. Ignorance can be exploited. Awareness demands a response. Scripture never treats vigilance as paranoia. It treats it as responsibility. Watch, it says. Be sober. Be alert. Not because danger is everywhere, but because influence prefers those who assume nothing is. Resistance does not begin with rejection. It begins with discernment. It means paying attention to what shapes your thoughts when no one else is watching. It means questioning what occupies your focus for hours at a time. It means recognizing when habits stop serving and start steering. Ancient people guarded thresholds because they believed presence mattered. Modern people abandon thresholds because they were told nothing unseen exists. Both cannot be right. The goal is not fear. The goal is clarity. Because clarity restores agency, and agency closes doors that never should have been open. But this is not the end of the story. Because some doors are not opened accidentally. Some are opened deliberately. In the next episode, we'll step beyond personal thresholds and examine what happens when institutions, ideologies, and ambition attempt to breach boundaries. Humanity was never meant to cross. When curiosity becomes defiance, when knowledge becomes obsession, when doors are forced open not for wisdom but for power. Doorways are not myths, they are choices. And someone is always watching which ones we choose to leave open.
Cheers!